Can you introduce yourself and your experience with gesture dance?
Um, I'm a college student and I really like watching short videos. I have been doing gesture dance for quite a while. It's
Hmm.
kind of one of my hobbies.
Okay, so when did you first start doing gesture dance?
I think it was a few years ago. I saw
Mm.
some videos online and thought they were really cute and easy to follow. So I just tried it myself.
Yeah, me too. What made you want to keep doing it?
It's fun and not too hard. You
Hmm.
don't need any professional skills and you can just do it anywhere. Also, when I finish a video, I feel very happy. Like I have made something.
Yeah. Do you usually follow trends or create your own style?
Mostly, mostly I follow trends because uh, because that's what everyone is doing. But
Hmm.
sometimes I change small parts or add my own expressions to make it a bit different.
How often do you film gesture dance videos?
Not every day, but maybe a few times a week if I have time.
Hmm.
If I see a trend I really like, I will try it.
So, do you care about likes and comments?
A little. If more people like my video, I feel more motivated. But
Hmm.
even if not, I still enjoy the process.
So, do you interact with other people through gesture dance?
Yes, sometimes I comment on others' videos, and I also watch what other people are doing. It's
Hmm.
interesting to see how everyone does the same dance in different ways.
So, do you feel like you're part of a community?
Yeah, kind of. When the trend is popular, it feels like everyone is connected in some way. Even if we don't know each other, we are doing the same thing.
So, how do you think gesture dance becomes popular?
Um, I think it's because people copy each other.
Hmm.
One video gets popular and then more people try it and it spreads more really fast.
So, do you think gesture dance is just entertainment?
Not really. I think it's more like a kind of online culture because people keep sharing and creating new things.
What does gesture dance mean to you?
It's something fun I like to do and it also helps me relax. Uh, Sometimes it's also a way to express myself.
Okay, thank you for your time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. I think the idea of remixing and reinterpretation also connects really well to accessibility because trends usually spread when people feel that they can realistically enjoy them instead of just admire them for a distance.
Yeah, it's
So,
fine.
so earlier you mentioned that gesture dance felt very accessible compared to traditional dance form. I think accessibility is probably one of the biggest reasons these trends spread so quickly online. Could you explain more about why accessibility matters? What is it about gesture dance specifically that makes people feel comfortable enough to try participating themselves rather than just watching others people do?
I think gesture dance feels stressful because most trends are designed to be simple enough for ordinary users to learn quickly. Traditional dance can sometimes look intimidating because it often requires technical skill or formal training, but gest- gesture dance usually focus on short and repetitive movements that people can imitate after watching a video several times. That makes participant participation feel achievable instead of overwhelming. I also think social media changes people's expectations because users constantly see ordinary people mm, participating, not just professionals. When trends are performed by students, friends, couples, or random users filming in everyday spaces, participation feels much more realistic and approachable. People are more likely to join trends when they believe they can successfully recreate themselves.
Oh, accessibility makes participation feel socially possible, not just technically possible.
Yeah, exactly.
People are much more likely to participate when they think I could probably do that too.
Yeah,
So that idea of accessibility seems really important because social media trends usually depend on mass participation. If something feels too difficult or exclusive, most users probably would not even attempt it. But accessibility alone probably is not enough to explain why people stay engaged with these trends for so long.
yeah, I agree.
You also talked earlier about how gesture dance trends create a sense of connection between users online. I think that idea is really interesting because many participants are complete strangers, yet they still seem to feel involved in a shared experience together. Could you explain more about what creates that feeling of community? Why do you think participating in the same trends makes people feel socially connected even without direct personal interactions?
I think trends create more community because they give people a shared reference point and a shared activity. If the same music, movements, or challenges appear repeatedly online, users feel like they are participating in the same cultural moment together. Even if people do not know each other personally, they still recognize the trend and understand the context behind it. That creates a feeling of familiarity and connection. Social media also encourages interaction through comments, reports, tweets, and reaction videos. So participation become visible and collection rather than isolated. I think many people enjoy the feeling of being part of something larger than themselves, especially online when trends spread globally and connect huge members of users at the same time.
So participation becomes less about individual videos and more about shared cultural experiences.
Yeah,
So, which is interesting because people often dismiss trends as shallow, but socially they can still be really powerful.
exactly.
That's really interesting because it suggests participation is not only about individual, but also about social and collective at the same time. So these online experiences are heavily shaped by platforms themselves, especially recommendation system and algorithms.
Yeah.
Another topic I wanted to ask is that algorithms and recommendation system. Platforms like TikTok constantly decide which videos become visible and which trends spread widely. Do you think users are fully choosing what they participate in, or do you think platforms themselves strongly influence participation by repeatedly promoting certain songs, dance, or creators to users?
Um, I definitely think platforms have a huge influence on participation. Many trends become popular because algorithms repeatedly push the same content onto users' feeds. When people see the same dance many times every day, they naturally become more familiar with it and more likely to participate themselves. Algorithms shape what users pay attention to and what feels culturally important at the specific moment. Uh, at the same time, Users usually actively decide whether they want to join trends or not, so participation is not completely controlled by the platform. I think it is more accurate to say that platforms strongly guide participation rather than completely deny it. Social media trends, social media trends depend both on user engagement and on technological systems that increase visibility and circulation.
Yeah, so even though participation feels spontaneous, there's actually a lot of invisible structure behind it. Do you think
Yes,
people sometimes underestimate how much algorithms affect their behavior online?
I think so. People usually feel like they are choosing content freely, but what they see is already heavily filtered by the platform.
That's interesting because recommendation systems almost shape what feels popular or culturally relevant in the first place. And when
Exactly.
something appears repeatedly on people's feeds, participation almost starts feeling inevitable.
Yeah, trends become hard to ignore after a while.
Yeah, especially because social media rewards repetition. Once users see a trend becoming successful, more people want to recreate it.
Yeah, popularity encourages more participation.
So participation online is not only social but also technology, tech, techno, technological.
Yeah, I think both are really connected now.
Right. So participation online is never completely independent from technology itself. And I think that leads into a bigger question about whether temporary, temporary online trends can still have cultural significance, even if they disappear quickly. Humans really do dismissing things the second people enjoy them online.
Yeah, that's definitely happened.
Finally, some people argue that gesture dance trends are too temporary or too finally some people argue that gesture dance trends are too temporary to be considered culturally meaningful because trends disappear quickly. Critics sometimes view them as disposable entertainment rather than real cultural participation. After years of engaging with gesture dance online, how would you respond to that criticism? Do you think temporary online trends can still have cultural importance?
Yes, I definitely think temporary trends can still have cultural importance, even if trends not last only last for a short period of time. They still influence how people communicate, interact, and express themselves while they are popular. Gesture dance affect the music people listen to, the way users present themselves online, and the kinds of interactions people have with each other on social media platforms. Temporary trends can still shape behavior and social experiences in meaningful ways. I also think digital culture naturally moves very quickly, so the short lifespan of trends does not make them culturally irrelevant. Instead, it reflects how online participation constantly moves and changes over time.
So cultural significance does not necessarily depend on permanence.
Yeah,
Something can still shape people's experience even if it's only exists for a short time. I also think that
exactly.
people sometimes underestimate how much online trends influence offline life too. Songs, phrases, dances, even jokes from social media often become part of everyday conversations very quickly.
Yeah. Online trends de- definitively affect a real-life interaction.
So do you think gesture dance changed the relationship between audience and creators online?
Yeah, on platforms like TikTok, audio audience often become creators themselves instead of only watching spectators.
So this seems really central to participatory culture in general because boundary between consumer and creator becomes much less key. And even though the videos themselves may look simple, the larger system around them involves participation, communication, imitation, creativity, and community all happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's why gesture dance becomes such a large part of online culture.
Honestly, the fact that millions of people collectively learned hand movements from strangers online probably says more about contemporary digital culture than people want to admit.
Probably, yeah.
Earlier, we talked a lot about participation and community, but I also think gesture dance connects to a broader shift in how people express themselves online. Social media today is so heavily based around visibility, performance, and interaction that trends often become part of how users build their online identities.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask more about identity online. Do you think participating in gesture dance affect the way people present themselves on social media? For example, do users think carefully about what kind of image or personality they want to communicate through their videos?
yes. I think people definitely think about presentation when they participate in gesture dance. Still try to make some videos reflect their own personality or style. Some people focus more on cute expressions when others emphasize humor, fashion, editing, or energy. The choices people make in filming and presenting videos often communicate something about how they want to be perceived online. I think social media participation is closely connected to identify because platforms encourage users to constantly present and share themselves publicly. Gesture dance becomes part of that process because they allows users to combine participating in trends with personal expression at the same time.
Right. So even within highly repetitive trends, individuality still matters a lot, which is
Yeah,
interesting because people often criticize trends for making everyone look the same, but participants themselves still seem very focused on self expression.
yeah, people still want their vision to feel unique somehow.
And social media probably encourages that too, because um, standing out increases visibility.
Yeah,
I also think that tension between individuality and repetition is one of the most interesting part of online culture in general. People want to join collective trends, but they also want to feel personally recognizable within those trends. It's basically mass participation mixed with personal branding. Modern digital culture somehow turned dancing into both community interaction and self presentation.
yeah, that's actually very accurate.
Finally, looking forward, do you think gesture dance trends will continue to be an important part of digital culture in the future? Or do you think this kind of participation is temporary and might eventually disappear as platforms and online habits change?
I think gesture dance or similar forms of participation will probably continue evolving rather than disappearing completely. Social media platforms are always changing, but people still seem to enjoy trends that allow them to participate collective, collectively and express themselves creatively, even if specific dances disappear. The large culture of imitation, remixing, and participation will probably remain important online. I think users enjoy feeling connection to trends and uh, communities, so platforms will continue encouraging these kinds of interactions. The exact format may change over time, but participatory activities will likely remain central to digital culture because they keep users engaged socially and emotionally.
So the specific trends may be temporary, but the larger participatory structure behind them is probably much more permanent.
Yeah,
That makes sense because online culture constantly changes forms, but participation itself seems to remain central across the platforms. In a
exactly.
way, gesture dance becomes less important as an isolated trend and more important as an example of how digital participation works overall.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And this is probably why studying something that initially looks small or simple can actually reveal a lot about social media culture more broadly. So we just talk about online identity and self-expression, but I also think gesture dance changes how people communicate emotionally online. A lot of trends involve not just movement, but mood, humor, relationships, and emotional interaction between participants.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
do you think gesture dance functions partly as a form of emotional communication online? In other words, beyond simply copying movements, do people use these videos to express feelings, relationships, or social connections?
Yes, I think gesture dance definitely works as a form of communication in many situations. You often use these videos to interact with friends, partners, or online audience in emotional and social ways. For example, couples might film gesture dance together to show closeness or affection, while friends use trends to create a shared memories and group interactions. Even facial expressions, humor, and editing choices communication communicate emotions beyond the movements themselves. I think that is part of why gesture dance becomes so popular, because the videos are not only about technical performance, they also allow users to express person- personality, relationships, and emotional through participation in trends.
So the movements themselves become connected to social meaning and emotional interaction, which makes
Yeah,
sense because communication online today is increasingly visual and performative rather than purely text based.
exactly.
People used to update statuses online and now they communicate emotions through trending audio clips.
Honestly, yeah.
I also think that emotional communication helps explain why users become attached to trends even when the content itself seems simple. Particip- Participation starts becoming connected to memories, relationships, and experiences rather than just entertainment alone. So,
Yeah.
looking back now, do you think Chester Dance videos also function as a kind of digital memories? For example, when users film trends with friends or partners, do the videos become meaningful partly because they preserve moments and experiences from specific periods of life?
Yes, exactly. I think many gesture dance videos become meaningful memories over time, especially when they are connected to specific people or periods in someone's life. Even if the trend itself disappears later, the video still remind users of the emotions and relationships they experienced at the time. For example, filming trends with friends during school or with people close to you can later feel because the videos capture everyday interactions and social experience. I think that emotional attachment is another reason people participate feels meaningful to users. The video are not only temporary entertainment connected content, they also become personal records of social experiences and movements in digital life.
So even trends that disappear culturally may still remain personally meaningful to participants.
Yes,
That's really interesting because participatory culture is often discussed socially or technologically, but there's still clearly an emotional and personal dimension involved. And honestly, future historians are probably going to study thousands of TikTok dances trying to understand human relationships in 2020s, which is both ridiculous and completely believable at the same time.
probably yes.
Earlier, we discussed community and emotional communication, but I also think gesture dance reflects changing ideas about creativity online. Traditional ideas of creativity usually focus on originality and individual authorship, while social media culture often encourage remixing, adaptation, and participation instead. So, do you
Right.
think gesture dance changes the way people understand creativity itself? For example, instead of creating something completely original from nothing, social media users often build an existing trends by adapting, remixing, or slightly modifying content created by others. Do you think that kind of participation also still counts as creativity?
Yes, I definitely think it still counts as creativity, even if it looks different from more traditional ideas of originally artistic creation. On social media, creativity often happens through remixing and reinterpretation rather than completely inventing something new. Creative dance trends usually involve shared movements or sounds, but users still personalize their videos through expressions, editing, film style, humor, fashion, or interaction with other participants. I think the creative comes partly from how users reinterpret trends within their own social and cultural contexts. Participatory culture online is often collaborative rather than purely individual. So creativity becomes something collective and constantly evolving instead of something created entirely by one person alone.
Yeah, so creativity becomes more distributed and shared across large groups of users rather than centered around individual authorship, which makes
Yeah,
sense because digital culture today depends heavily on circulation, imitation, and adaptation.
yes,
Yeah, and honestly, most cultures throughout history probably work that way anyway. Humans just became very emotionally attached to the idea that real creativity must appear magically from one isolated genius sitting alone somewhere else.
yeah. I think social media challenges that idea a lot.
Because online participation makes creativity look much more collaborative and interactive.
Yes,
And gesture dance reflect that really clearly things trends only become meaningful when large numbers of users participate together rather than individually.
Exactly. Participation is a huge part of what gives the trend meaning.